Hello dear viewer, Frigalicious Murdoch X here with a monthly update to my beloved PlayStation 2 collection. There are 1,796 PlayStation 2 games released in North America that I want to own and play, and frankly, it's one of the more affordable consoles to collect for. And while affordability is an important aspect, the reason that I love the PlayStation 2 library so much is that it's also so diverse. It was during an age of experimentation. For example, Katamari Damacy, only available on the PS2. I love this hobby. The first game today is Pinball Hall of Fame, the Williams Collection. I love a good pinball video game. Kirby's Pinball Land is one of my favorites, so I was looking forward to giving this game a playthrough, but then this happened. This is not something you ever want to see before a video game loads up. Crave did release some good games. I can only think of one off the top of my head, but despite my disappointment, I wanted to give this game a fair shot. I mean, it's classic Williams pinball games. As long as it doesn't have crappy controls, it should be fine. This game has crappy controls. I mentioned that Kirby game earlier. I like my flippers to be thumb buttons on the side of the controllers thanks to that. The worst thing they could do is put the flippers on the L and R buttons, which is, of course, what they did. You can use L3 and R3 for the flippers for some reason, but there's no way to change the controls to something reasonable. You're stuck with shoulder bumpers or clicking down the analog sticks. On the other hand, I will give the game credit for good plunger control. You're given fantastic precision in how much power you want to put into launching the ball. Next up, we have Driving Emotion Type S, which was just the opposite of the last game. I was expecting a boring racer, and then the Squaresoft logo popped up. I didn't know Squaresoft had released a racing game. This looks like it's one of those racers that goes for realism, but when I played, the steering was controlled with the D-pad and it was a bit touchy. After doing some research, I guess there is a way to use the analog stick, but it's also prone to sending the car veering to the side. Long story short, I wasn't a fan of this. I prefer arcade racing games that don't aim for realism, and I've also read that players who prefer realism also don't like this game. I don't know who their target audience was supposed to be, but bad controls ruin it for everyone. Backyard Wrestling, don't try this at home. You know, I don't want to be the guy talking trash about a bunch of games. I want to find the good in them, but with so many games to get through, I can't spend a lot of time with all of them, which brings us to this title. This is not a popular game, but it seems like it sold well. I run into this one everywhere. I can see why people don't like this one, as it's a sort of mashup of a fighting game and a wrestling game. Rather than being a unique combination of the two, it feels slapped together. On the other hand, I did enjoy this more than I thought I would. I'm bad at wrestling games, so having a fighting aspect made this more approachable for me. Also of note, I watched a ton of the CKY videos in Jackass back in the day, and the backyard wrestling stuff was always right next to it at the video store. Respect. Kingdom Hearts Reply Chain of Memories. Is that re for reply? I always thought that's what that was for. I don't know what that is for. This was a Game Boy Advance game? I had no idea. I thought it was weird that there was an action combat system based on cards, but I guess being a GBA game might have something to do with that? Maybe? The card system is controversial, and it appears that the game development was outsourced to Jupiter Corporation rather than done by the team at Square. I've heard that the story is good, but that the game is too linear. The graphics are nice, and it's always fun to hear Donald Duck talk, but that card-based action battle system looks like a mess. The good news, on the other hand, is that I now have all 3 Kingdom Hearts games on the PS2, sub-collection goal complete. Prince of Persia Warriors Within. For some reason, I get these and Assassin's Creed mixed up in my head. It might be because they're both yearly releases for Ubisoft, I don't know. I didn't spend much time with this game because after a short introduction of how to fight, you meet the first boss and she kicked my ass. Twice. I thought the Prince of Persia games were about running on walls. I didn't get to run on any walls. The healing at water sources was an interesting game mechanic, but because I spent so little time with this, I don't have much to say about it. I know I need to just push through and beat this first boss because with a Metacritic score of 83, I'm sure this game has a ton to offer. My favorite video game magazine, PSM, also gave it a perfect score. See? This is what trying to blow through so many games does to you. It makes you a jaded old man that doesn't want to play anything. I kid, but maybe I should look these games up ahead of time so I know what I'm in for. Perhaps knowing that this was one of the better games in the series ahead of time would have helped me force my way through that first boss. It's something I'll have to keep in mind. Rise of the Kasai, the sequel to Mark of Kree. Run around punching and kicking. The controls are interesting in this game. Rather than the right analog stick controlling the camera, it pushes a focus beam around which assigns attack buttons to enemies. I worry that this mechanic might get in the way of the player rather than create an interesting new way of playing, as most people seem to prefer Mark of Kree. Or did Kree also use that system? I've never actually played that one. I don't believe this is a bad game by any means, and it has two big things going for it. First, it's an official Sony release, just like Gran Turismo 4 and God of War, both of which also came out in 2005. The second reason is the Metacritic score. 68 is not bad. It's not a great score, but only around 3% of the PS2 library has a 90 or better, so make of that what you will. And of course, the final game in today's video, and the one I enjoyed the most, is The Incredibles: Rise of the Underminer. This game has a lot in common with the last one. Both the Incredibles game and the Kasai game are beat-em-ups played with two characters. There was some criticism for Kasai about the AI player's abilities, but The Incredibles was far worse about this in my opinion. In this game, if you do anything to an enemy with the active character, the side character just kind of stops doing anything to them. In The Incredibles: Rise of the Underminer, you play one of two Disney superheroes from the film and are free to switch back and forth as long as one of them hasn't been temporarily removed from the playfield. Throughout the game, you'll gain experience and will be able to enhance the hero's skills. This is a lot like a Disney version of the X-Men Legends games. I like playing as the Ice Guy. Freezing enemies and then surfboarding into their faces is a never-ending source of entertainment. Can't recommend it enough. The enemies here don't feel too difficult, too tedious, or too easy. It's a good balance. Also of note, the stage designs are fantastic for what they're going for. I loved the parts where Frozone and Mr. Incredible were on boats floating along, getting shot at while also punching the robots jumping onto the ship. One thing I do to test games like this is to see how much of the fighting I can skip by just running past the enemies, and this one allows for a lot of that. There are moments where you'll be forced to either slow down or stop until all of the bad guys in the area are defeated. There are also segments like the boat battles that can't be skipped, but despite any shortfalls that may be in here, this game keeps it simple, and it works. The Disney game design methods win again. This is no top shelf game, but it's a lot of fun and I never felt cheated. Just kidding, this boulder that got me right here is a cheating pile of garbage, but despite this one dumpster rock, I had a great time and I ended up playing this far longer than I thought I would. Good times. With these 7 new games added to the collection, my total is now at 731 out of 1,796 for a total of 40.7% of a complete collection. Now, my new apartment is it's smaller than my last apartment, and I'm beginning to run out of shelf space. In order to kind of save some space, I jammed a bunch of sports and racing games that I don't care for in a box and threw them in the closet. I should probably stick that Driving Evolution game in there. Save some shelf space. If you're not sick of looking at my ugly face yet, you should subscribe. Calling it. It's good. It's done.